none of you are hardened by sin's deception. I'll say that again because it's good. But encourage each other daily while it is still called today, so that none of you are hardened by sin's deception. Hi, so like you've heard, my name is Joel. I'm one of the pastors here. Pastor Mike is on a retreat with Christ Together. Actually, those pastors, it's not actually with them, but it's with the organization. He's being poured into, he's being loved on, he's being trained. So he's actually there, so you get to look at my face today. So that's fake. So anyway, all right, so we are in the middle of a sermon series called Human Flourishing, and is inspired by a case study that was done by Harvard and Baylor over the course of 2 years. They surveyed hundreds of thousands of people through multiple countries, and they wanted to figure out who or how we flourish as humans. And they broke it up into 6 domains. That if we flourish, if we are successful, if we're good in these 6 domains, then we'll flourish as a human. And those are happiness and life satisfaction, mental and physical health, meaning and purpose, character and virtue, close social relationships, and financial and material stability. So we're wrapping up the mental and physical health domain this week and next week before kicking off meaning and purpose after Mother's Day. But today, I want to talk about something that's not directly mental health, but has a huge effect on our mental health, and that's social media. I was envisioning there would be an actual groan, but you did. So thank you for actually groaning when I said that. So yes, social media. It's a gift and it's a curse because it is an amazing thing, but if our relationship isn't great in it, it can be soul-sucking, it can be toxic. But it can also be a really good, a really powerful gift for us to further the kingdom and share the gospel. So you may be hearing this and you may be thinking, okay, we're talking about social media. It doesn't really equate to me. I don't really get on social media that much. I'm not like those youngsters. Well, I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about how you interact with people. I'm talking about what your motives are and how you invest your time. So yes, I'll be saying things like comment section, I'll be saying things like reels and posts, and I'll be saying things like that, but through those things, pick up the actual point of the messages is how we interact, it's how we live in community. So I want to ask you a couple questions. Is your relationship with and is your reputation on social media healthy enough for you to be used to further God's kingdom and share the gospel? Let's pray. Lord, I want to come to you. I want to thank you so much for being a good God, a loving God, one that is there for us, and one that has given us gifts and tools like social media, like the internet, like technology. But Lord, I ask that you can remain the focus of our lives, that we do not lose sight of the new flashy, of the distraction. And Lord, I ask that as we listen to the message today, we're really honest with ourselves, that I'm honest with myself and how I use the social media, in my relationship to social media. So Lord, be with us, be with this time. It is all in your name. Thank you so much. We love you. It's in your name. Amen. So we can't deny how awesome it is. Think about 500 years ago. How did we communicate? At that point in time, we were still like lighting fires on hills to communicate that danger's coming. Like if we wanted to tell our cousin in another town that we're having a kid, we had to literally run and travel and go. It's like 500 years ago, there's been a huge burst in communication. Even 100 years ago, we had telegrams and phones, but they weren't really accessible. They weren't everywhere. They weren't something that the common person could just like queue up. Like you couldn't just do that in your kitchen. You had to go somewhere. You had to have the resources. And like if you wanted to communicate with someone who's in another country, someone who's at war, maybe you had to write a letter and send it. And I don't know about you, but I watched 19 23. It's a great show. But this past season, it talked about how pretty much a big part of the plot was they sent a letter from Montana to Africa, and it took like 6 months to get it there. And she was trying to tell her nephew, we're going to die if you don't come back home. But it took 6 months to travel from Montana to Africa. And that was 100 years ago. So now we have the capabilities to open our phone, get on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And within seconds, we can post a video, share a comment, share something, and throughout the globe, within seconds, people can see it, people can consume it, people can hear what we have to share. And that's all from a device that we carry in our pockets. It's good because we get to keep up with our family and our friends. We get to access information. We get to access inspiration from people we never interact with. It's a benefit to society and having part of our life. But when our relationship with social media is unhealthy, it can corrupt our mental health, our relationships, our physical health, our sense of security, our sense of privacy. So our sermon today is entitled DTR, and that means define the relationship. So we have to start by setting our DTR for our social media. We have to define the relationship in order for us to know what our relationship is healthy, or if it's healthy, or if we have to, how it affects us, how we need to adjust. So I want to stop and ask you a question. When you close a social media app, what is the feeling that you feel? Are you full of joy? Are you excited about what God has in your life? Or are you defeated? Are you empty? Are you jealous? Do you feel less than? So if we are unhealthy in our use of it, we will never produce healthy fruit from it. So I'm going to grab this mic because this guy's tweaking. I'm not sure if you see, but I have an antenna. So you can mute that. So, okay. So I want to start by going over some pitfalls, some things that we have in our life that can trip us up, that we can get stuck in. And these are things that can be toxic, that we can fall prey to. And I want to start with comparing. So if we're honest, when we are comparing our lives to other people, when we're comparing our lives to someone we know or someone we don't know, we are literally saying that what God has given us is not enough. We're saying that we don't want we don't want what you've given us, we want what you've given them. And comparing social media leads us to long for their house, their spouse, and their story. Social media can trap us in comparing our blooper reel with someone else's highlight reel. So, like, to think about it, like you're sitting on your couch on your day off, or you're at work in the break room, you're eating your lean cuisine, and you open up Instagram, and you see one of your friends is in Costa Rica, and you're like, man, my life's lame. They're in Costa Rica, I'm eating a lean cuisine in this cold break room. And what we don't realize, what we don't see, is they're just posting the good stuff. What we don't see is that they got food poisoning in the airport from bad sushi, and they missed their layover, and they lost their luggage for 2 days, and them and their spouse have been fighting the whole time. But all you see is these like really, really well-lit pool photos while they're holding like fruity cocktails, or them making this face while they're about to like skydive or zip line. Like it's, all you're seeing is the awesome. But I think we forget that we are the same way. We put our best foot forward. Now, we just may post or pictures of our kids having fun at the park, but that's not us frustrated with having to do the bills. That's not us doing mindless, aimless things that we don't really enjoy. We put our best foot forward just the same way. And just because their thing is a little cooler than ours, it doesn't mean their whole life is better. It doesn't mean we have to envy them for their life because they have junk. There's probably junk on that trip to Costa Rica, even though it would be pretty dope to go to Costa Rica. But it's still, you don't see the junk. Galatians 6:4-5 says, let each person examine his own work, and then he can take pride in himself alone and not compare himself with someone else. For each person will have to carry his own load. So when we look at someone's highlight reel and compare it to our blooper reel, we are losing sight that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God gave us this life. God gave us these experiences. God gave us what we have on purpose for us to use and for us to be used. The next pitfall is validation. We can confuse likes for love. The litmus test to this is if your post, if your reel, if your story doesn't get the attention that you want, doesn't get the attention you think it deserves, how do you respond? I took this great picture and I captioned it with something really impactful and it was good, and I went about my business and I came back and I only had 2 likes. Dang, why? So we are no longer accepting God's love as enough. We need each other's love. We feel like, yeah, God, you love me, but it'd be really cool if they loved me too. They don't love you. They like that you're in Costa Rica. It's different. So we're saying that God's love isn't enough. But it is. I don't think I need to tell you guys that God's love is enough, but I'm going to anyway. So like I said a little bit ago, Psalms 139 says we're fearfully and wonderfully made. He knows every bit about us. He knows our life. He knows how we're built. He knows all of our imperfections, and he loves us, and he uses us. Romans 5:8 says that God showed his love for us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God loves us, even as we were sinners. Even before we became his children, he loved us enough to send his son to die for us. John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. He loves us. God loves us. God's love is enough. It should be enough. So if your reels, if your videos, if your TikToks, if your posts, if your photos, if your snaps, your tweets, if they don't get the type of attention that you want, are you okay? Now, I understand that some of us are content creators, and we have to know what lands. We have to know what is impactful and what is good for engagement. So I'm not saying don't know what you're doing and don't know business-wise what you're doing on social media, but if your love, if your self-worth, if your value, if your validation is found in red filled in hearts and blue thumbs up, then your relationship with social media needs adjusted. You are loved by Jesus. You are loved by your community. You're loved. Now, I will say validation doesn't always come in happy forms. Isn't always good, I like things. Sometimes validation is found in negative, and we look for pity. So sometimes we will vent for our validation. Proverbs 29:11 says, a fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man holds it in check. Now, we can have frustrations, and we can have problems, and we can have junk, And instead of going to someone and sharing with them, instead of talking through it, we'll just go and put it on the interwebs, because that makes sense. And what will happen is someone from high school you haven't talked to in 15 years will like it. And you're like, oh, they see me. They love me. They appreciate me. And you get your validation from that. You don't need your love from pity. You don't need to search for love through venting, through frustrations. That's not the attention that you want. Now, there is a difference between venting and sharing. So if you share your struggles, if you share your hardships, if you share what you're going through, and you do it with a purposeful way in order to help other people, in order to let other people know that they're not alone, to let other people know that you're going through stuff too, that can be used. And there's a difference between sharing and venting. Now, besides venting being not a great source of love, you can also vent in a way that can be harmful for relationships. Like, imagine you say, oh, I hate my boss. Because who hasn't posted something like that? Some like frustration, like, oh, I hate my boss. Well, what happens? Almost every time, a coworker shows your boss. And then it's real awkward. You show up to work, and you're like, I was kidding. Or what about if you're like, oh, my brother is so irresponsible? Well, then Thanksgiving comes, and you're like, hey, can you pass the mashed potatoes? And he's like, I don't know. Am I responsible enough to pass you the mashed potatoes? So we can vent to try to get love. We can vent because we're frustrated with someone. But really what we should be venting, how we should be venting, is face-to-face with that person, face-to-face with someone to get it off our chest. We can journal it. We can put it in a prayer journal. We can pray over it. We can give it to God. We can give it over to God. We can let go of it. The next one is secrecy. Danger, Will Robinson. Secrecy. 20% of divorces happen because of social media. 20%. It is now a common clause on prenups. Social media behavior is a clause on prenups. Secrecy. It is dangerous to live life in secret. You can really easily follow a page you shouldn't, look at a photo a little too long, comment on a picture that you shouldn't. You can even DM someone that you shouldn't, and your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend can never find out because it's secret. But Matthew 10:26 says, there's nothing covered that won't be uncovered. There's nothing hidden that won't be made known. So, if you wouldn't have that conversation in your DMs in front of your significant other, you shouldn't have it. If you wouldn't like that photo, if you wouldn't comment, if you wouldn't follow that page, like if you were to see that person at the mall, and you're sitting next to your spouse, and you're like, wow, they're built well. If you wouldn't do that, don't do it on social media. Don't do it. I said, if you wouldn't do that, don't do that. That's just advice anyone should live by. If you're like, men, not nod your head, don't do that. That's a bad idea. So, if you're single, you're like, well, I don't have a significant other to be secret against. I can just look at this. I can like that. I can look at her. I can acknowledge that she's built well. No. You're still living in sin. You're still having lustful thoughts about someone you don't know in secret. No one sees it. If you're at work and you're scrolling through Instagram and there's thirst trap and thirst trap and thirst trap, it's still sin. It's still you succumbing to sexual temptation. And Jesus knows about that. Surprise. I don't know if you guys know those bumper stickers and those memes. It's like a classic painting of Jesus. And he's just like standing there, and it just says, I saw that. He sees it. He sees it. So, it's funny because it's true. So, really, the whole point of that was don't be dumb. Just don't be dumb. That's just a good life rule. But so, in addition to actual secrecy, we feel like we have false secrecy, and we feel like we have anonymity. I've been saying that word all week, preparing myself for that moment, and I still said it wrong. Anonymity. So we feel like we have anonymity, this feeling of being anonymous, and it's fake anonymity. You know what that word is. It's fake anonymity, and that breeds hostility. So when we feel like we're anonymous, we feel like we're safe because we're sitting behind a keyboard, because we're typing with our thumbs, not speaking with our words. We feel like we can communicate whatever we want, say whatever we want to whoever we want. It doesn't matter. But we forget that there's a person on the other side of that glass. Our public language needs to match our private language. If you could not stand face to face with someone and say it to their face, you shouldn't say it in the comments section. How would you feel? How would you respond if there's a knock on your door and you open the door and that guy that you just said a not so loving comment on their political post was standing right there? How would you respond? What would you say? Hey. How would you respond if every person you ever argued with on social media, every person you ever had like a snide remark, every person who disagreed with you and you insulted, you belittled, if every person you've ever had a negative interaction with social media knocked on your door and Jesus was standing right next to them, looking at you and saying, like, what you got to say? What would you say? Would you say the same thing you said behind the glass with your thumbs? Would you? You should, because you shouldn't be saying anything with your thumbs that you wouldn't say with your mouth to their face. False secrecy makes us feel like we're anonymous, and our public language needs to match our private language. If we can't stand by our words, including the ones we talk or where we type, we need to reevaluate our relationship with social media, because you're not anonymous. Now, a couple weeks ago when I preached last, I shared the quote, and it's still relevant to this message. Dr. Esau McCauley says Jesus was invitational. He was only confrontational when he had to be. He was invitational, only confrontational when he had to be. So, we can fall into the trap of distraction. Now, this is the one I'm sure everyone was like not looking forward to, the distraction of social media, because that's the one I think we're all real guilty of. I'm going to show you stats to prove that you are. So anyway, we escape with social media. If we're uncomfortable, I'm guilty of it. I know you're guilty of it. You're just kind of like, this room's uncomfortable. I'm going to like just disappear in my phone and scroll. Or if you're bored, if you're not getting enough stimulation and you're just bored, you're just on your phone scrolling. I'm sure you guys have been guilty. I know I have. I know every single night I get a text message from my wife when I'm laying in my son's room and they're falling asleep. I get a text message from my wife saying, "Are you coming?" Because what's happened is I go on Instagram and I'm scrolling through the reels. I'm scrolling through the reels. I'm scrolling through the reels. And then my thumb like taps a part of the screen and it pops up to the top. And I'm like, wait, I started watching reels on that video? That was like half an hour ago. Where did time go? Do I need a haircut now? Like, how did I get here that I'm still watching 30-second videos for this amount of time? We Jimmy back there called it doom scrolling. I've never heard that before. But I think we all doom scroll. Because it's easy, because we're bored. And because there's a literal scientific algorithm telling us we should. It is designed to show us something that you're into, that you respond to, and to show you something else that you're into, so you don't get tired of that topic. And then once you watch this for a little bit, then it shows you something else that you're into. And after a while, it brings you back to this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, until you've doom scrolled for 45 minutes, and you wasted time. And you get a text message from your wife saying, "Are you coming?" That's my life. So, now I'm sure you're going to say young people use cell phones in a abhorrent amount of time, just an obscene amount of time. Pull up this slide. So it isn't just young people. 16 to 24, on average, the most recent study, 5 hours and 45 minutes. And that's just social media. That's not text, that's not FaceTime, that's not browsing the internet, that's not anything. That's just social media. Just social media. 25 to 34, 5 hours and 31 minutes. 35 to 44, 4 hours and 49 minutes. 45 to 54, 3 hours and 57 minutes. 22% of teenagers, so 13 to 20-year-olds, spend an average 8 to 9 hours a day on social media. 8 to 9 hours a day. That's a full-time job. And that's 7 days a week. So that's overtime. They're putting in overtime on TikTok. So that is time that could be used doing anything else. If you're 16 to 24, that's time that could be used towards schooling, towards jobs, towards just enjoying life because you're young and you have freedom, experiencing life. But instead, we scroll. If you're 25 to 34, that could be like finding a spouse. That could be investing in your spouse if you have one. That could be furthering your education, investing into your career. If you're 35 to 44, that's time with your kids. That's 4 hours and 49 minutes a day that you're wasting that you could be hanging out with your kids. 45 to 54, all of the above. We are wasting an obscene amount of time. For what? For distraction, for junk. So, social media, like I said before, is a powerful tool. And if used properly, can make massive impact for the gospel. And we can redeem that. We can redeem the junk that we let it be in our life. So I want to go through some things that we can help redeem. And we want to be on social media. We want to be where the people are. I call that the aerial syndrome. Like, I want to be where the people are. I want to see them dancing, walking around on those, what's that word again? Oh, streets. I want to be where the people are. Sorry, I am a millennial, and I was in show choir and musical theater in high school, so don't judge me. Just ignore me, but not right now, but usually. But anyway, seriously, we want to be where the people are. Because we want to be impactful where the people are. And where are people? They're not at malls anymore. They're on their phones. They're on social media. 4.76 billion people are on social media. What? 90% of Americans use social media 3 to 4 times a day. 90% of Americans. So we are literally on the edge of a pool of people who want to consume content multiple times a day. So we want to be where the people are so that we can share the gospel, so we can make an impact for the kingdom. That's why this matters. Honestly, that's why this matters. That's why I'm talking about social media. It's because we have this tool. And if we are living in unhealthy patterns, if we have unhealthy expectations of social media, we can't be used through it. We can't use it for the furthering because we are so distracted. We're letting the enemy distract us. So, a couple practical things. Is what you're posting God honoring? 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, so whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do or you post on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, do everything for the glory of God. Now, I'm not saying don't post selfies and don't post memes because they're funny. Keep posting memes. I want to see them. But is what you're doing honoring God? We need to share. We don't debate. When it comes to difficult issues, difficult topics, we need more people in our homes than faces on our phones. We need more people in our homes and less faces on our phones. Hot button issues. You know what those are. I don't have to go down the list of taboo things. You can look through your network. You can look through the sea of garbage and see what the hot button issues are. We don't need to talk about those things on social media. We need to sit down, at least FaceTime, but we need to sit down with people and have conversations. When's the last time you've been in a comment section and you've seen a debate? And it ended by someone saying, wow, you're right. I have never seen it from that angle. How could I have been so wrong? When was the last time you ever saw that? Never. It usually ends in like F, like asterisk sign, exclamation point, like a long string of curse words and yelling and insults, and then it just stops. Like it just like stops from like someone like attacks someone's grandma and like, okay, I'm done. Why? Like what? The anger, the resentment, the frustration isn't gone, but the conversation ends. And what does that do? That festers. That festers in our heart and our minds. That becomes part of us. And that argument on social media, in between glass, has now destroyed an actual physical, personal relationship. Because now you see that person as that person that I argued with that one time. And they're dumb, and I'm right, and they're wrong. We don't argue. We share. We don't debate. We're called to work out our problems face to face. In Matthew 18, it says, if a brother sins against you, go to him and make peace. Go to him. Physically go and resolve your issues. If we get angry with someone, like, we would much rather just despise them in person than unfriend them. And why is that? Why? Why would we rather destroy relationships between father and son, between friend and friend? We'll still be friends on Facebook, because if we weren't, we'd be petty. We'll still do that, but I don't want to go to Christmas anymore because they're there. We can post with the intent of discipleship and encouragement. Will this post build others up, or will it tear them down? Ephesians 4:29 says, "No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear." Is this post, is this real, is this story building people up, or is it tearing them down? And it's not just saying Christian-y things. It's displaying a life that points to Christ, that glorifies Christ. It says in 1 Timothy that we are to set example for new believers. We are to be the example for new believers to follow. If a new Christian befriends you, geez, what is happening? This isn't working. But anyway, if a new Christian befriends you on social medias, would they know what it's like to be a Christian by what you do on social media? If a new follower of Christ only was discipled through your posts, through your stories, would they know what a healthy follower of Christ looks like? Proverbs says that you need to guard your heart because what's in your heart will come out. Are you posting to encourage and to disciple? Now, another way we can do is we don't cast our pearls before trolls. Okay, anyway, Matthew 7:6 says, "Don't give what is holy to dogs or toss your pearls to pigs." That's what the Bible says, pigs. "For they will trample them and under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." We do not cast our pearls before trolls. We all know those people. Those people that just want to watch the world burn. Thank you, Dark Knight. They just want to have conflict. They don't want to talk. They don't want to talk things through. They just want to push your buttons and egg you on and rile you up until you say something you don't want to say. Don't engage. Abort, abort, abort. Proverbs 23:9 says, "Do not speak to be heard by a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of your words." They don't want to hear what you have to say. You can make the best argument in the world. You can say 2 + 2 is 4, and they'll say, "No, it's 5." And you're like, what? Don't waste time. Some people don't want to have conversation. They just want to egg you on. Don't jump into that arena. Don't fight that battle. Don't waste your time. Don't cast your pearls before trolls. Manage your social media time. I'm sure everyone got the notification like an hour and a half ago about screen time. Got the notification like, boop, oh, I'm up 7% from last week. And that's telling us how much we've looked at our phones. And it's almost just as judgmental as the Netflix, "Are you still watching?" question. Almost as judgmental. Netflix is more judgmental, but it's almost as judgmental by saying, "You are up 7%. Maybe you should use your phone less. Thank you, iPhone. Go away." But we need to spend time face to face. We are relying on screen to screen, not face to face. Have you guys ever noticed how similar FaceTime is to like visiting someone in prison? You're looking at glass. You see your face. The audio is a little off. You can hear them, but it's kind of distorted. It's like you're talking to someone in prison. Maybe that's why it's called a cell phone. Jail cell. Dad joke alert. Like I said, ignore me. But we need to invest in people face to face. If we are in their presence, we need to be present. So in closing, a couple minutes ago, you may have noticed with that graph that had the hours spent by each age group, it didn't say 55 and up. You wanna know why? So those studies have pretty much said the older adult population is so inconsistent that there could be someone who uses it 8 hours a day, or there could be someone who uses it 8 minutes a year. So they just don't include it. So I started doing research on the older adult population and habits of social media, and almost every article I could find says that 80% of the older adult population uses social media mainly to connect with their loved ones, their family and friends, to find ways to find more out of life, and then how to have a healthier lifestyle. Those are the 3 things older adults try to do on social media. I think we could learn from the older population in a lot of things, and just understanding more about life and more about how life is if we sat down and listen to them. But we should take a page out of their book, out of their social media use book, because they use it to connect with their loved ones, to better their experience here on earth, and to live a healthier lifestyle. They use it for connection, motivation, and inspiration. We use it for condemnation. We use it to be distracted. We use it to compare ourselves to others. We use it for all the junk we use it for, to waste time, to find our validation, to find our hope, to find our love. We use it for condemnation. We should be using it for connection, motivation, and inspiration. What do you use it for? Do you connect to people so you can share the gospel? Are you motivated by seeing other people sharing the gospel and using it as a tool? Do you see that Christian influencer and be like, oh, wow, they're doing really good things? Wow. Are you inspired? Are you seeing someone who faces some hardship and they still see the glory of God? They still see God's love. They still are pushing towards him. Are you inspired by it? Or do you see those things and you feel less than? And you feel shame because you're not that, because you're comparing. And they're getting more likes, they're getting more shares, so you don't have the validation that you want. How are you using social media? For connection, motivation, inspiration, or for condemnation? Let's close our eyes. As the band comes up, as the prayer team comes up, we truly live in an amazing time where we have resources and tools like social media, where we can connect to others across the globe, but we need to learn how to use it in a healthy way. We need to work on our relationships with it in order to use it. And if that means you need to take time away from it, you need to erase those apps, then do it. Get healthy, find a good balance, find a good mental state, a good heart state. Get rid of it. And then if you're ready, reintroduce it into your life. And then in a month and a half, if you get unhealthy again, get rid of it again. Now, it's possible that even though it is a great gift, it could just be a distraction. And maybe you just need to get rid of it. Maybe you just need to stop it. Maybe you just need to not do it anymore. And if that is the hardship that you face because of your faith in Christ, because of your walk with Christ, if that's the hardest thing you have to deal with is not have social media, count yourself as blessed. If it means you don't get to use it, count yourself as blessed. If you need to set time limits, set time limits. What I do is I put all my social medias into a folder, and then every couple weeks I move it around on my screen, so that when my thumb, by force of habit, goes to touch that folder, I open up utilities or tools or something else. And it reminds me, I don't need to be opening up Instagram right now. I don't need to be opening up Facebook right now. I need to be hanging out with my kids. I need to be going for a walk. I need to be praying with someone. I need to be texting someone who I haven't seen at church in a while. I need to be investing in my face-to-face relationships, not my screen-to-screen relationships. So whatever it is you have to do, whatever actions you have to take, you may be good. Social media may be great. You may not have any struggles with it. If so, great, awesome. Use it as a tool. Use it as the tool that it is for the gospel. Spread God's love. But if it is distracting you, if you are finding false validation in it, if you spend hours comparing your life, comparing your house and your spouse and your story to someone else's, take a break. Change your behavior. Are you using it for connection, motivation, or inspiration? Or are you focusing on condemnation? God, we love you. You are a good God. You've given us things for us to enjoy. You've given us things that thousands of years ago wouldn't be imaginable. Hundreds of years, like 50 years ago, wouldn't be imaginable. And Lord, we get distracted. We let the enemy distract us through those things. So Lord, as we go through our life, as we get into the car and our spouse is driving, remind us we don't have to get into our phones. Remind us we can look over, have a conversation. This afternoon, when we're bored on the couch, remind us we don't have to pull out our phone and watch videos. We can play with our kids. We can go outside, hang out with our neighbors. We can go for a walk. We can go enjoy life, real life, not screen life. You have given us a beautiful, beautiful earth, a beautiful planet, a beautiful home. And we are so focused on looking down at the screen. Remind us to look up. Give us the strength to fight against the temptation to look down and bury our face in screens. Remind us to look up and see you. See the beauty, see your glory, see our friends, see our family. Just see everything you've given us. It is in your name. Amen.